Okay, welcome to HolmFront. We are doing just a brief. This isn't going to be very long,
You
but
say that now.
we're going to try and not make it very long. I'm Tyler, your host. This is Mitch, my really artistic friend on my right. Obviously, this is the trailer for the new Superman just dropped by James Gunn, which
He's the director, the guy who did Guardians of the Galaxy.
guy who did Guardians of the Galaxy.
All three of them, I think, right? I think he did all three.
Probably, yeah, probably.
I know he did the first two.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with any of his other work, but he has a very specific style from those ones.
He did a Suicide Squad movie, the one that was allegedly good.
It was better than the other one. I don't know if that's good, but
the first one was awful.
It's a really bad movie.
So every movie's better than that movie.
That's
I
fair.
think, honestly.
That's fair. So yeah, James Gunn. Apparently, he's supposed to be taking over quite a bit of the DC properties, which I'm okay with it not being Snyder. Don't know how I feel about it being James Gunn. Personally, I think they just handed it to Matt Reeves. He did a great Batman movie, so just let him keep going with it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd want it, but we could force him. So
we have the money.
DC should have the money, right? And they have plenty of properties. So we're just gonna watch the trailer, the teaser, or whatever. I'll put it up. I don't know if I'm gonna get dinged for this. I'm gonna try. I don't know the rules totally. I don't know if you can play the whole thing. I don't know if I have to be talking the whole time. I don't have to pause it. I have no idea.
So we'll just make lots of reactions and you'll be fine.
Oh wow! what?
There's Superman.
That's crazy. Is that Superman? Where's Batman? So we're gonna put it up. We're gonna play it. This will be our live reaction, and we'll go from there. See what kind of commentary we have based off of it.
Special treat. The first time we do a live reaction to something.
Yeah, special. Okay, yeah, I'm sure. All right, here we go. Superman.
Okay, I'm seeing lots of snow.
Snow.
That's what I'm supposed to do, right?
Yeah. Is this the Fortress of Solitude coming in sometime soon here? I hope this not getting picked up on the mics. I probably should have tested that first.
His costume looks really goofy.
Nuh-uh. Yes.
Look how brightly colored he is.
He looks like a Clark Kent. Mostly. I mean,
yeah.
How can you get away from Henry Cavill? Like, why would you
I know Henry
it?
Cavill is perfect. It's going to be hard to adjust.
Yeah. I'm not unwilling. James Gunn. Look how brightly lit all of this
That's what Lois Lane should look like.
That's fair. That is
For
a better
crying
Lois
out
Lane.
loud.
Amy Adams was
I like Amy
cast.
Adams, but she's not a very good Lois Lane. She doesn't look like her.
No. They're making him look too much like Henry Cavill when they do the Clark Kent look. I don't know.
That's how the man looks.
I guess.
That's how Superman looks.
Yeah, but it's specific to him. Like, I don't know. What is this? Is this the villain, the antagonist of the film?
I thought he was just blowing.
Oh, no. James Gunn.
You don't like that?
There are things that are okay not to put in the film. Oh, my gosh.
He saves people.
Okay. I like the casting for Lex.
Yeah, I'm mixed. We'll have to see. He looks like him, at least.
He does look like him.
Okay, that costume's better.
Yeah. Oh, looks
what
better.
happened?
Oh, no.
So he has a good costume and a bad
Is
costume?
that Nathan Fillion as the Green Lantern? The casting everyone's always wanted forever.
This music's good.
Yeah, it's not bad. Okay, no.
Whoa, that looked weird.
Oh, that was the tornado guy. Okay. Okay, so he's just jumping straight in with trying to start for this Justice League thing. Okay, it was close to John Williams, but it wasn't quite. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a...
Oh, no.
Yeah, you're good now.
I'm going to close. Doesn't start playing. All right. Okay. All right.
My favorite part was the dog.
Why? Why?
So I could get that reaction.
Oh man.
I don't like the dog.
understand.
The dog is stupid. Who is this dog? Why is there a stupid dog?
I don't know.
I have a dog, by the way, for all you people freaking out. I love my dog. My dog's way better than that dog.
I think his name is Crypto. I think.
I watched the Superman cartoon show when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I don't remember that dog ever showing up. Is he in that?
I know he's accurate to comics or one of the shows or something. There is a like super dog.
That's one of those ideas.
That's
you
a very
don't
James
preserve.
Gunn thing to do for sure.
Yeah, it's like keeping Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings. It's like it was a good thing that we got rid of this idea.
Ooh, you're gonna make a lot of people mad on that one.
Tom Bombadil sucked, and I don't care what everybody else thinks.
Why are we back to Lord of the Rings again?
Because he defeated the whole point of the story. I'm bringing it around. Tom Bombadil shows up.
This
unaffected.
Is not a Lord of the Rings episode.
He's unaffected by the ring, which defeats the whole point of the story. Because no one can destroy it. You need a hobbit, someone who's the unassuming person. If Tom Bombadil can destroy it and chooses not to because he's an a-hole, that ruins the whole point of the story. So now we have the equivalency, as I see it, in the form of this super dog. They chose Super Dog over Supergirl, and I will never forgive them for that because I love Supergirl.
We got all over the place. Foreshadowing to a Lord of the Rings episode that we may or may not do. Okay, so let's jump a little bit back.
Yeah, did you like it? Did you like what you saw?
I don't know. I will say, I'll say this. I would appreciate, and this is for you guys, WB or whoever is releasing this, don't release any more. That's it. That's, like, I would even say you said...
No, they're going to franchise it. They're going to...
You showed too much in this trailer.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Don't show any more in it. Don't release like a 3-minute long trailer.
I agree. This trailer was actually
good.
solid. It was just like, I like how there was no dialogue.
Yeah.
What did I need? Well, actually, there was a little bit. He talked to the dog. But, like, I really didn't need dialogue.
You don't need any more.
The music was fine. It was great. And you got to see Superman. It's going to have Superman in it. And it's going to be Lois Lane. And he'll have villains and such.
And I understand.
Like, I don't need anything else.
He showed Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern, which everybody's wanted forever.
Oh, that's right. Because there was this big thing where they thought he would be Green Lantern.
Well, he's Green Lantern in the animated movies.
Oh, okay.
So I think they were all like, oh, well, he's probably going to show up in the real films, which I would have appreciated. I mean, Ryan Reynolds wasn't the worst casting decision. I mean, depending on how you feel about Ryan Reynolds himself.
Exactly.
The movie was really bad itself. So, I mean, he didn't really get a fair shake. But
Green Lantern is such a dumb concept for a character. He's right up there with Ant-Man. He's just a dumb premise. Sorry. There are most ideas you can make valid just by like putting enough heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
And then there are some where it's like, look, you can't save the story.
Right.
It's not gonna.
There's not much you can do.
It's just dumb.
It depends on what.
I feel about.
It depends on what route you're trying to go with DC. So I will say, for a Superman movie, this looks very much like the Boy Scout Superman that people want to see. This looks very much like the very lighthearted, very hopeful, quintessential American hero that Superman embodies.
But he was coughing up blood in the snow there, so there's going to be a little bit of push.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have some of that, yes.
Yeah.
My point is that like James Gunn is bringing that very much like lightheartedness to it that Snyder is incapable of. Here's the thing: I don't know how different it's going to be. Like, it's James Gunn, and he did Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is quintessential Marvel humor, which I hate.
It's also quintessential cringe.
Yeah, and like, okay, so I used to hate the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I've come to warm up to the first one. The second one, I've told you about this. It's not a good movie, but it doesn't try to be more than it is, and it doesn't really. It's like
it knows what it is. Yeah,
it's very self-aware. And so it's like, all right, I can deal with the first one. It's not something I enjoy. It's not something I'll be like, I love that movie. The second one's awful. It's awful. It's awful, awful, awful. There's a god named Ego that is Quinn's dad, and they play baseball with these like blue orbs and it's so stupid. It's awful. That's also James Gunn. So if he avoids the Marvel humor, which I know he's not going to, because of the way Nathan Fillion looked, I already know he's not going to. So there's gonna be a lot of cringe humor probably. I just hope that it's serious enough to be able to connect to this universe that he's clearly trying to connect. But here's the thing, and this is the problem I've had with DC for a while now. They are far too scattered with their content. They have all the shows. They have the Arrowverse. They've got the Snyderverse. And then they've got the Nolan films. And then they've got the Matt Reeves films. And then they've got the animated films, the movies themselves. And they've got the animated TV show. Like, it's so much all over the place. They don't have, like, one that you can jump into. And I will give that to Marvel. The MCU, you can follow. Like, the first, whatever that is, 15, 16 films, all the way up to Endgame. Like, there's a clear line that you can just follow through, right? DC doesn't really have that. And Snyder tried, and I understand why people had problems with it. So, and actually, I won't say that yet. Our opinion on Man of Steel, but
I can't talk about my opinion of Man of Steel in this.
Well, I was gonna say we can use that for different. I want to make a Rotten Disparities episode on Man of Steel because it has it.
That's fair, but what I was about to say was this movie does not look like Man of Steel, and I liked Man of Steel.
Yeah, I guess that's a little bit. So we enjoyed his interpretation of Man of Steel. We did not appreciate the subsequent two films.
Oh, speak for yourself. Because the next one was Batman v Superman. Was that the second one? No, I like that movie too.
It has moments. It has moments.
It has moments on both sides of the equation. Yes.
Yeah.
Good ones and bad. Highs and lows.
Did you watch Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder Cut?
Okay,
the 4-hour long one.
That's the one I did not see.
Okay.
Because it was like 4 hours long.
It's 4 hours long.
And I was like, whoa, 4 hours? And also Joss Whedon took over the project.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't like Joss Whedon movies. I'm gonna hate this. And then I saw the trailer, and the trailer looked awful.
So
like the effects look so bad.
You didn't see the Whedon cut either?
So I didn't see the Whedon one.
Oh man.
I'm interested kind of in the Snyder one, but it's so long. And I just don't know. I just feel like I'm gonna get like a sort of somewhat superior version of Rise of Skywalker, where it's like you had someone take their project away and screw it up, and then the original creator got mad and took it back, and then it's kind of a disaster. But maybe it wasn't.
What I think happened, so I tried to follow it. It's really confusing. Apparently, Snyder shot everything, and then somewhere along there, he gets kicked off or he removes himself from the project. The rumor is that he was fired, but he also had his daughter die. So they're not really sure what exactly it was, whether it's a difference between him and the studios or if it's just personal problems that he left for. I don't know. And it's not that important necessarily, but they handed it over to Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon, I think he reshot a bunch of stuff, he reanimated a bunch of stuff, and then he changed the color palette of everything.
Yeah,
he did all kinds of bad things for the film.
Yeah, he just made it look weird.
So when that released, everybody hated it because they're like, this is dumb. This is a garbage film. It doesn't really connect to the.
It was
Batman
like the worst
Superman
movie of that year, I think. If it was
really bad.
Like most people agreed, it was just that awful. Like,
yeah,
well, because it was like, it was the brainchild of like two polar opposite style artists. Yeah. If you can even call one of them an artist. So it was just like, and that's what a disaster.
Like, we really like Firefly, and that's a Joss Whedon project.
You really like Firefly. It's okay.
You like Firefly.
It's all right.
Great show. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily translate. And like,
I actually have a lot of problems with Firefly.
Fair. And because
it's a Whedon project, I promise with all his projects, he pisses me off.
We can get into that later.
Sorry, go ahead.
The first Avengers film is a decent film for a Marvel property.
Yeah, that's the best project he's ever done. As I do at least have some level of respect for like making that a coherent movie for building up from 4 other movies. I still feel like that's a fairly sensible thing to do. But for most people, they thought that was like this feat of human capacity that they did not realize was possible. And I was like, all you do is make 4 movies and then another movie. It's like Harry Potter. They made the first 4 and then they made another Harry Potter movie that followed up that one.
Whoa. I mean, to be fair, I think it was all the technicalities of like following the lore and then picking up where other directors and writers had built up to this one project, and he had to match the styles and such.
They were different storylines that needed to thread together. So I understand.
There's accomplishment there.
There is some
regardless of all that, and we, well, I'll say I thought that the second Avengers film was decent, which was also him.
Oh, that movie's awful.
It has moments that I like. I thought I gave it more credit than people often do. I'll say that.
That's like half star. That movie was so bad. This is actually interesting. We're now creating a little list of things that we need to talk about because apparently we don't agree.
Get into Marvel universe here.
I think it would be good on the show if we disagreed on a few things that we talk about because usually I think we're in similar camps, right?
Similar.
It's like there's like a ratio, but we're still in this within striking range of each other.
And that's not to say like I'm not trying to praise the film. Like it's not a good movie, if that helps. Like I thought I give it more. Yeah, Ultron. There you go. I give it more credit than most people do.
Okay,
but I don't think it's a good movie.
Okay, that's
because
fair.
I don't like most Marvel properties in general. I don't like most. I think most of the movies are not good at all.
I'm mostly in that camp, but I have warmed up to a number of them in time.
Yeah, and
I think I gave some of them a little bit of unfair. Like
hatred,
prejudice, just because everybody was so fanatical, and they were just like fun blockbuster movies. That's all I thought they were, and people were just like so. It was just hard to. It's like you feel that urge to be in the counterculture movement.
Yeah,
it was the same thing with Dark Knight. Like people wouldn't shut up about that movie, and I was like, it was all right.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I mean it's a good movie, and
there's something to be said about aging well. Which is what I think happened with Guardians of the Galaxy. Because when I watched it subsequently, I was like, okay. This feels like it's just kind of staying in its own lane, and I appreciate that. Like it seemed like he knew what he was doing with it. For a class of C characters, he pulls in and is able to connect it. It was like, all right, that's pretty good for what he's doing. Yeah. I didn't care too much for his Suicide Squad film. It's better than the other one. It's not great.
The other one was like one of the worst movies ever made. So
also that. So outside of all that, James Gunn is a very strange decision for Superman or for DC in general, but only because of what DC has done, and it's been very confused about its identity. I think that's my biggest problem is that Matt Reeves is very clear about what he's putting on screen, and he's a director for the Batman film with Robert Pattinson, which I think is one of the better, if not one of the best DC properties that's been released in a long time.
Agreed. Well, and to be fair, Marvel was a lot better at this. Like, I say specify was because lately they've been kind of, I don't know what they're doing. They're freaking out. Well, it's because they gave it over to Disney, which was the dumbest decision ever.
Disney's always been in charge.
Back with like Iron Man 1?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they own the MCU. So what I think the case was, so they mapped out how all these films were going to go. I know we're getting way into Marvel with all this stuff, but they mapped out how all this was going to go, and they had what's his name? I'm blanking. There was two people in charge of the project. It was I'll think of his name later. Dang it. I was like right on the tip of my
tongue. Are you talking about in charge of Marvel?
Yeah, in charge of like mapping. It was the guy who plays Happy in Iron Man. And I'm yeah, exactly. So
John
we're
Favreau,
and there was another guy that were both like mapping out how this storyline was going to go all the way up into Endgame. And so
then they had the Russo brothers, which was probably the best. The Russo brothers,
yeah, but they were just directors. It was two people in charge of like the arc of how everything was going to get to a certain point to Endgame specifically.
That's fair. I also feel like though the Russo brothers are a particularly important, noteworthy because they made the best movies from that camp.
They definitely
so much
the
so
quality, like, way
that
up.
It attracted people who like myself. Because actually, even when Winter Soldier came out, and everybody was going crazy, I saw that and I was like, "This is actually really good."
Yeah.
And even though I was like, Marvel stuff, I was like, I actually really like this movie. This is excellent. And then
James.
So I feel like they had a broader appeal. And Gunn, I feel like you're right. Gunn is in that camp too. At least, I mean, he didn't appeal to the same type of like broader range. No. He was super narrow with what he was doing. But everybody who liked Guardians of the Galaxy, that is what they want. That is what they like.
Well, it wasn't just. So that was what I think he did that was interesting.
So he was respectful of the source material.
Trying to pull back to James Gunn in the Superman trailer. So James Gunn not only had a pretty difficult task, because who knew Guardians of the Galaxy before that movie came out? No one.
I did.
Very few people, unless they were like hardcore, staunch comic book fans, knew what this was. So James Gunn not only had to pull in a wider audience, but he also had to appease the existing Marvel audience that the MCU had built up.
With this extremely obscure, weird property.
Right. Which is a pretty big, like, and I'll give him props for that. He did a good job.
Yeah.
And he had a good cast to work with and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he did all that, and then he did the Suicide Squad, which was decent, and then I think finally they separated ways. They allowed Snyder to have his cut, and they separated ways, and they've given it over to James Gunn, or it seems like that's the direction that they're going. All that said, we liked Man of Steel quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
I think that they were really confused about... They were trying too hard to keep up with Marvel when they got on the bandwagon way too late, and that's why you got Batman v Superman and Justice League subsequently, rather than following the formula that Marvel put down, where Batman should have got his own film, Superman should have got his own film, and then whomever else that you're trying to throw into that, because that's what they did with Marvel, is that each one got its own film, except for Hulk, which is a long story. But they each got their own film that landed them into the Avengers, and there was a storyline, a plot that kind of connected them all together. Whereas DC did not do that. They were trying too hard to just cram all this stuff together and then reap in the rewards that Marvel was bringing them.
Yeah.
Because once Batman v Superman came out, that was the same time that Civil War came out. And so they were like, well, we've got to have this rivalry so we can kind of match this timeline.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when, I can't remember which Avengers film came out when Justice League was released. But they were trying to compete with that as well. And so it was so messy because of all that. And then they were doing this weird thing where it was like part of it was kind of specific to DC, but they were really following along the lines of Marvel style. Like it was very stylistic, kind of lighthearted, and like they had a bunch of the jokes and stuff in it, which is why they pulled in Whedon. And so it lost its identity. It didn't have something unique enough to separate the Marvel and the DC crowd. And DC is very specific about what they want. They have the Batmans, and they have, I guess they have Superman as well because he's one of the top tier. But typically it tends to be a lot darker than Marvel content. And so when Matt Reeves did Batman, I was like, well, this is really great. I wonder if they're going to like stick with this style and move forward. But then James Gunn announced his Superman. I was like, so is this Superman connected to Matt Reeves' Batman, or is he doing his own thing that's totally disconnected from Reeves? Because now you're even muttering the waters further.
Yeah.
Because now Matt Reeves' Batman has like a offshoot series of the Penguin on HBO. So does that mean that James Gunn is going to have a bunch of offshoots from his stuff as well? Like, it just seems like it's going to open too many doors, and they're going to try and go through all of them. I don't know. James Gunn is obviously going to pull in a bunch of butts. The trailer itself looks interesting. It looks like it's not giving me enough to gain like what he's going to do. But I'm also okay with that because I want to watch the movie to find that stuff out, which has been an ongoing theme for this show of like what trailers should and shouldn't do. Anyway, that like the long-winded version of like kind of what I feel from just seeing that.
The unpacking of like the DC problem, though, which I think you've admirably depicted,
Thanks.
Makes sense. Well, I say that because this is coming from someone who's heard this argument from you probably like 6 times, but I've never really gotten the argument that you were trying to say until just now.
Gotcha.
Because every time you did, I was just like, what difference does it make? And I would just kind of default to that. But now I feel like I understand what you're saying. It's the problem with DC is that they have not decided what their course of action is.
No.
And what they end up doing is an amalgamation of their own ideas, the creators that they hire, and the Marvel thing. And the mix does not work. The mix is gross.
Which is why it's been having such an issue.
Yeah, it's like putting cream cheese into your veggie, blender smoothie, and then
I might actually try that.
you put something really obscure in there, and then you blend it up, and it's like, this doesn't taste right. Throw in a little wheatgrass for good measure, and it's like,
so my arguments over the years are finally starting to make sense to you. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you're basically, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, because you're basically saying that like it's because this is how I'm interpreting it is because they've taken the stance of not having a stance. You just get this weird mesh of thoughts, and they don't correlate because, for example,
it's identityless. Because that's one thing that Marvel Well, I'll say two things that Marvel has consistently had really well is that they had a coherent plan that clearly it bleeds through. Like you can tell that it was mapped out.
Yes.
Regardless of what you think of the properties, like there was planning behind it. There's
right.
That. The other thing that it has really great, which actually DC shares, is casting.
Great
Marvel's casting.
Yeah.
Whoever that person is one of the most brilliant casters. Like that person
in the history
should
of cinema,
have a job forever.
Yeah. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans,
Chris Hemsworth, like
all
everybody. Of these people, and I will even say Scarlett Johansson. I'm not a big fan of Scarlett Johansson, but the casting
I thought she was really well cast.
Extremely well cast. Yeah, she plays that role. Like regardless of how well the movies did, those characters held up. Like sometimes they were carrying the movies, but they carried the movies, and that was well done.
Exactly.
DC does a pretty good job of their cat. Like Henry Cavill was a great casting decision.
Oh, agreed.
Ben Affleck, despite my prior disagreements, he won me over. I watched
he won everybody over.
I was like,
you
know what? He was a great decision. This is a really good Batman. Flash is probably where I would disagree. didn't like Flash.
No,
I don't like that
so.
casting decision.
They're fans of Ezra Miller's performance, and I'm like, I don't get it. Like he's I think he's bad. Actually, I'm sorry. I don't feel like he's a good actor at all. Well, I think he needs a career change.
So that leads into this argument is that the Flash film was another one that was trying to like play off of these themes, where it was like a wider DCEU.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, so are we moving away and just cutting it all off now?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so this is something I know we agree on, is that Flash movie is one of the worst films I've sat down and suffered through.
Yeah, we need to make a list now of the top 10 worst, because that movie's probably on there.
It's so bad.
It's
the only
awful.
thing, and I agree with you here, the only thing that came out of it was Supergirl, because
she was cool.
She was a very compelling, very interesting, cool character.
And we had Michael Keaton Batman as her mentor. I was like, this is awesome. I just want Supergirl and Michael Keaton Batman as a full-on movie unto itself.
It's just their team up.
That was the best part of the Flash movie.
Right. Was just take Flash out.
And then all the scenes without him are good.
Which is the interesting thing, because you're right. Like that when you mentioned that after we watched it, I was like, that would have been, actually, I would have loved that movie. Just Supergirl and Batman.
That
Michael
sounds
Keaton Batman.
so
That's
cool.
awesome.
Because like Batman training her, like he's older, he's wiser, he's been around longer, so he has more like street smarts of how like the world of humanity works. But he doesn't have the superpowers like she does. So that would make it interesting, because
he has a history of training these teenagers like Dick Grayson.
Right.
So if he just picks up someone who can't be killed by the Joker, like, that would be awesome.
That sounds so interesting. And I want to see like their characters just like constantly be at odds with each other, but then they're both fighting for good and justice, and that would just be really cool.
That's
like the Supergirl actress, I was a little hesitant because she didn't quite look the way that I'm used to seeing the character, but it was still like an original take, and I felt like they really owned up to it. I thought like she really was like, okay, this is the role, this is how I'm going to do it. And I was like, I'll try it, and I feel like that's something that's frequently missed, is the like, because DC, to kind of add on to what you were saying, maybe what they try to do is try too much. They just try and try and try instead of just commit.
Yeah, they don't pick something and go with it. They just kind of like, let's do all of it. And then you get lost because you're like, where do I start? What do I watch? It's just it's too much.
If I could help you as your friend, what I do with DC movies is I just watch them, and I don't give any thought whatsoever to the DCU, like expanded universe. Not a thing. If I'm watching the Batman, it's just the Batman.
Okay, but that's my point though, is that I can't. Because they do this, and that's my thing. Is like, here. Okay, so I'll and I've hoped this since the beginning. I hope that Matt Reeves just gets 3 films, and they are just their own thing, and that's it. My problem with it is that they too often are trying too hard to do too much. And it's like, when you see stuff like this, you're like, okay,
this obviously doesn't work in the Batman movie that we saw.
That's what I'm saying, though, is that, are they going to try anyway?
Stop thinking about that.
They keep
it doesn't
doing
matter.
it.
It's just a Superman movie. Did you see Batman in the trailer?
That doesn't mean he's not going to be there.
It doesn't, but for now, he's not there. Now, you can lobby this criticism and bring it back if he shows up in the movie. But if he doesn't, it's just a movie about Superman.
See, I wish that I could believe that, but I know that they're going to be like, oh, multiverse. Ooh. Screw your multiverse. Stop doing that. That's it. But that's my point, is that this linear thing does not happen with DC.
No.
And I wish, yeah, whatever. I'll enjoy the properties as they exist, and Batman as a property exists, and that's great. And I like that. Yeah. I love that movie. My problem is that now that they'll try and like, oh well, that was really successful, and this is really successful. Like, just mash them together. It just seems like there's too many executives at the top that are just like, yeah, do that, like connect it all, and it's like, please stop connecting it all, because now I'm worried. I know, don't worry, it's just a movie. Now I'm worried that they'll be like, oh, we could just connect Henry Cavill and this Superman, and they can show up together at some point. That's my point. See, you make that face, but they'll do that crap.
They would do crap like that, but I mean, that's pretty far reach. Like, how would you create a justifiable explanation?
They did it in the Arrowverse.
Okay, I also feel like, so here's the other part of my philosophy that you're missing. Don't watch the shows.
I don't.
Don't watch the TV shows. Don't exist. They're not a thing because they're ridiculous. Like, they're so long. There's this huge investment, and they break all the rules.
To be fair, I did try watching Arrow, and I got like halfway through the first season. I was like, this is garbage. I don't understand the appeal. Why everybody likes this. And then I watched like half of one episode of The Flash, and I was like, all right, that's enough. We're going to be done.
Yeah, it's like the Disney Channel or the DC
the
stuff.
CW, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like
absolute garbage.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's like, and no offense to anybody who watches them. I'm just saying that like the shows are so disparately different than the movies that if you go and watch the shows, it's going to confuse you because they don't line up at all with the movies.
But the fact that it's a DC property, I know for a fact that someone has mentioned it, and I'm hoping that he gets shot down. But they're gonna be like, we could bring Arrow into this. We could, That's my problem with it, is that it's just a matter of time before someone puts in a stupid idea. They put Super Dog in the trailer.
Okay, because in this movie, this is a Guardians of the Galaxy style Superman movie,
which is why I have a problem.
Which is why I also have a problem.
Right.
But I'm just looking at it as a movie. Because like you saw in the trailer, he's got Super Dog. He has apparently Nathan Fillion Green Lantern. He's got, there was a scene with like a kaiju, like some Godzilla thing, like blasting fire at a building. It's like, okay, this is just absurd. Like, this is so stupid.
Well, the guy that has like the red face with the T on him, he's from Justice League Unlimited.
I don't care where he's from. See, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's just I'm seeing something goofy on screen.
It is goofy. That's my point, is that it's pulling from these inspirations. It's like, he turns half of his body into a tornado. So, like...
Oh, yeah. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. Like, this is a moronic idea to put into the movie. But he's going to do that because he did Suicide Squad, because he did Guardians of the Galaxy. Both movies where it's an ensemble cast of weird misadventure, mischievous failures, and they kind of achieve something. The difference is that he has Superman in his movie who's not a failure. And so that is now going to make for a bit of, he's going to have to wrestle with the fact that he actually has a competent main character. And that will
wrestle with it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do now.
I know. I'm so used to having losers and as leading characters. What do I do?
Now I have someone that can carry my movie if I let him.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, he has two, because he has Lois Lane. And the actress, I forget her name, but I've seen her before. And I'm like, yes, like she looks like Lois Lane.
She's got the look. Yeah.
She can definitely do that role. Like, I have total faith in that.
There's not to send this too much further. I want to cut this off pretty soon. But there's the movie Superman Returns, which is pretty obscure film now.
Is that the Bryan Singer movie?
I think it is Bryan Singer, because it's Kevin Spacey.
Yeah,
as
that's Bryan Singer. Yeah, that movie sucked.
Yes, but the castings for Superman and Lois Lane I thought were decent, because Superman looks a lot like Reeves, Christopher Reeves, and Lois Lane actually fits the part. She's like, she is Lois Lane. I was like, all right, cool. I can deal with that. The rest of the movie is not worth watching. It's really bad.
Well, it's just so slow. It's like this 3.5 hour Herculean Titanic movie.
Yeah.
And there's like really no plot. So you're just like, where are we going? What are we doing? You watch Kevin Spacey
he tries
being
to do
an
this,
evil
like,
Lex
dramatic
Luthor for
thing,
so long. Yeah.
Because Lois Lane's married and Superman's trying to deal with that because he's been gone for so long, and they're trying to connect it to the previous 3 films from the 80s and 70s. And
I need to watch them all together so that it makes sense. He was relying so much on those previous movies. I was like,
and
I
for
don't
our
know
generation,
any of those.
we're like, we've saw like maybe the first one, but none of us stuck around to see the rest of them.
I only had seen part of the one where he goes back in time by flying around.
That's
the
first one. Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, when he throws his S at Zod to like wrap him up.
Does he do that? That's
yes, he
so
does.
funny.
It's a great. We should pick out the best scenes from those.
Anyway, Superman. Okay, so for this movie though, I'm not going to go in with the expectations of Man of Steel.
No, of course
not going to get that.
And I'm not going to go in with Guardians of the Galaxy expectations either.
Right.
I will say Gunn seems like he's fairly adaptable to the project he's working on, but I've only seen Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad that I know of that he's done.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very specific style. I don't know if it fits Superman. Don't go in with bias. Just like let the movie be the movie.
The one thing I will be interested in, though, and this will be my final point, is that there is that shot of Superman. Like, I know I was making fun of his costume when you first see it because it does look pretty ridiculous. But then, like, there was another shot where he's walking into some, like, government building or something, and someone threw something at him, and he just kind of ignores it and goes in. And then you see him inside, and his suit was, like, way different. It was way more like the Henry Cavill. Like, it was so much more, like, subdued color-wise and stuff. And I'm not saying you can't have bright colors. I'm just saying that there's a ridiculousness angle that you inevitably bring up with, like, this kind of, you know, so, and if you look at, you know, it's all about, like, managing the tone, right, of your movie. And so, like, that, like, people like to criticize Zack Snyder so much for, like, oh, there's no color in this movie, there's no color. It's like, it's because he has this goofy comic book character that he wants you to take very seriously.
Yeah.
So he's trying to find a way to visually kind of bring you on to, like, and in some way that's very honoring because it's like, he's like, look, when people are reading those comic books, the story is very engaging. It is very compelling. And the bright colors is not something that feels disorienting in comic book form. But when you put it up as a movie, it can kind of look a little bit off because everything's hyper realistic now because you have real actors now. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
he scales back the
so
color.
He's trying to use the tone to make up what he can't do with a goofy comic book character.
Right, because when I say a goofy comic book character, like comic book stories are actually very good and very serious. Like the goofiness just becomes like intensified when you've got these bright colors on like real actors and they're in ridiculous spandex. So I feel like Snyder made a judgment call to try to elevate the heart of those stories.
Yeah.
And people don't give him enough credit for that because they don't like how he went about it. And like, I get that. As someone who didn't read the comic books, I don't really have as much to say.
But yes, I think they're way too harsh on him on average.
There is at least something to be said for, it doesn't feel like he just lacked any artistic integrity though.
Yeah,
it feels like he very much cares about the story he's telling and he's trying to tell that story faithfully. And that's what I appreciate about Snyder is that like at the end of the day, it's like there's that, and then the other part of it is he's way better action director than literally everyone in the MCU, apart from maybe the Russo brothers. I would say.
Oh, in the MCU, yeah. I thought you said DCU. Yeah, he did produce the best Batman fight scene
ever
put to screen. So there's that.
Ever.
I think. Yeah. Aside from his.
Well, even Superman and Man of Steel, like, the action's amazing in that movie. And I hate how people just rag on it. I'm like, the action's crazy. Like, that's one of the most, like intense, like,
well, that's what
it's
it
like
would look
gods
like.
battling.
That's what
awesome.
It would look like. Yeah, in my opinion, I was like, this is what would happen if these two characters fought.
Right.
It's destructive as hell, but this is what it would look like.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from his abundant use of slow-mo, yeah, I don't have a problem with him as a director. There's criticisms that I think are valid, but I think
he
was
like the punch-in shots that I don't like.
He was doing a really good job of putting his own spin on the DCEU. I think it just didn't resonate with enough people, especially his Man of Steel. There was problems that people had with it because it was too dark and brooding.
There's valid problems, but it wasn't moot. It wasn't a movie you could walk out of and be like, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of MCU movies where it's like Thor. It was like you know, like there's a lot of those in there because they did so many and they did them all in the same style. Yeah. And I don't know.
That's fair.
Are you gonna see it? You're gonna see it. We're gonna have to review it. I guess
we'll go see it. I'm gonna give it a fair shake. I'm curious as to like, James Gunn being the correct director for Superman.
He's not the best, but he's probably not the worst.
No, he's definitely not the worst. No, for sure. I'm just curious. I think I'm having a hard time visualizing what his Superman would look like.
Well, because he gave us like his...
Because his properties are just...
funniness.
There's nothing there that's similar to what Superman would look like. So I have no clue what it's going to be.
Well, yeah, he shows you like the goofy dog, super dog, and he's like, hey, I'm going to be a goofball.
Right.
And then he shows you like this weird serious moment, and you're like, well, that sounds like it has a lot of heart. So which is it?
Right.
So we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Maybe it'll be great. I don't know. We'll let you know. Thank you for watching.